A chill wind sweeps the borderlands of western Anatolia. It is 1299, and most maps still call this place Byzantine. Tonight, that label begins to peel away. Osman, son of Ertugrul, waits in the tall grass with 400 riders at his back. He is barely in his 20s, broad-shouldered, lean, and restless. All day he has fed his men nothing but dates and stories, tales of how a single spark can set a dry forest roaring. Now he means to prove it. Earlier that spring, Osman dreamed a dream he cannot shake. From the chest of the holy man, Sheikh Edebali, a full moon rose, split, and rained light that grew into a mighty tree. Its roots gripped 3 continents, its branches shaded oceans. Osman woke certain the dream was a sign, his sign. But a dream without action is smoke, so tonight he swings his sword toward destiny. The target is small, a Byzantine tax caravan bound for the hill fort of Bilicik. Ox carts creak under silver coins and sacks of grain, the lifeline of a crumbling empire. Torches sputter beside drowsy guards. Osman's scouts count fewer than 50 soldiers. Easy pickings, yet rich enough to feed every hungry village that now looks to him for protection. A flick of Osman's wrist. The riders fan out, hooves muffled with rags. A distant owl hoots. In the same heartbeat, arrows hiss from the tree line. Panic explodes. Horses rear, oxen bellow. Guards scramble for shields that are already pinned to wagon boards. Osman's men surge like black water, blades glinting under a half moon. 2 minutes of chaos, and the road goes silent, but for the clink of falling coins. Osman orders no prisoners harmed. Let them run, he says. The story they carry is worth more than gold. By dawn, every market from Bursa to Byzantium will whisper the same thing. A young Turk just stole the empire's purse under its own lantern light. When the loot reaches the frontier town of Sout, children cheer at pyramids of grain. Blacksmiths melt captured coins into new ones, stamped with a rising crescent. Osman walks the streets, handing bread to widows, promising that tonight every belly will sleep content. He wins hearts faster than he swung swords, but sparks can land in tinder anywhere. In a corner of the victory feast sits Dündar, Osman's own uncle, older, once heir to the clan, now eclipsed. He watches his nephew toast the warriors, watches village elders kiss Osman's fingertips, and feels something twist inside him. Pride curdles to envy. After midnight, while drums still boom and lamps still blaze, Dündar steals toward Osman's tent with 2 loyal captains. Steel flashes under the canvas flap, yet the blade meets a second blade. Konur Alp, Osman's towering bodyguard, blocks the strike a breath before it lands. Tents rip, oil lamps spill, shadows dance in frantic silhouette. Osman snatches his scimitar and finds himself crossing steel with family. "Your fire will burn us all," Dündar spits. "Then step aside," Osman answers, driving him back. When the dust settles, the uncle kneels in defeat. Ottoman custom urges mercy for bloodkin, but new customs are being written tonight. Osman spares Dündar's life, yet banishes him beyond the Sakarya River, marking his wrist, so no tribe will trust him again. Mercy, yes, but mercy that warns. As dawn's first stripe paints the horizon, Osman climbs a nearby ridge. Below, Sout stirs, smoke from morning hearths rises in thin gray ribbons. Roosters call. A muezzin's voice drifts across the scrubland. In his hand, he holds a single acorn, plucked during the night raid, small, hard, ordinary. He presses it into the soil beneath an old oak. "Grow," he whispers, half prayer, half command. "Grow wide enough to shade the world." Behind him, the riders saddle up. Fresh coin in their pouches, fresh purpose in their chests. They wait for his next nod. Ahead lies a patchwork of shaky Byzantine forts and rival Turkic bays, each a spark, each dry wood. Osman's eyes narrow. The map in his mind catches fire. And so a border skirmish turns into a fuse. The empire of the tree has taken root in the dark, and nothing on this frontier will look the same once the sun climbs high. Dawn, April 6th, 1453. A cold mist clings to the Bosporus. On the eastern shore, a sea of Ottoman tents flickers with torchlight. In the center of that camp stands Sultan Mehmed, only 21, slim, black-bearded, eyes sharp enough to cut cloth. Across the water rise the cream-colored walls of Constantinople, bragging 3 rings of stone and 1,000 years of unbreakable. Mehmed whispers, "Not today." Behind him squats a monster, Shahi, the royal cannon. The barrel is longer than 3 horses, nose to tail. 1 granite ball weighs more than a small car. At sunrise, the powder crew rams bag after bag down its throat. A spark touches the fuse. The roar feels like the earth splitting. Birds explode from the trees. On the far wall, a 10-meter scar appears, coughing dust into the sky. The city has just taken its first punch. Emperor Constantine XI watches that dust from the rampart. His defenders number maybe 7,000. Greeks in patched mail, Genoese mercenaries hoping for a bonus, monks gripping spears last used in parades. Supplies are thin, hope is thinner. Still, the emperor lifts his sword and shouts that Rome has stood this long, so it will stand again. For 46 straight days, the 2 young rulers trade hammer blows. By day, Shahi bellows until its bronze barrel glows cherry red. By night, Ottoman miners crawl under the moat with fire pots, while Byzantine counterminers listen for shovels and burst through the dirt, swinging axes in total darkness. Up on the walls, archers loose arrows by the moon. Down in the tunnels, men stab by sound alone. The city's inner harbor, the Golden Horn, looks safe behind a giant iron chain. Mehmed refuses to accept the word safe. One wet night, he orders 70 war galleys dragged over greased logs across the hill of Galata. At dawn, Constantinople's citizens wake to the impossible sight of Ottoman ships already inside their locked harbor, red flags flapping in the morning breeze. Panic spreads faster than fire in dry straw. Week 6. Shahi has fired 50 times. Every blast risks the barrel cracking, but Mehmed keeps gambling. At first light on May 29th, the crew rams in one last granite ball. The fuse spits. Boom. The barrel splits, but the shot flies true and smashes a hole beside the St. Romanus gate, wide enough for 3 men abreast. Drums roll through the Ottoman lines. 30,000 Janissaries kneel, kiss the ground, and charge. Constantine rides straight into the gap, cloak torn, beard white with plaster dust. Fishermen, bakers, and altar boys follow him, swinging anything with an edge. For an hour, the battle sways on broken shields and splintered lances. Then, an Ottoman banner appears on the inner wall, then a second, then a third. The defenders feel the fight leak out of their arms. The emperor vanishes in the crush. No one will ever find his body. At noon, Mehmed rides through the shattered gate. Sunbeams pour through cracked tiles of Hagia Sophia, catching dust like falling silver. The young sultan dismounts, kneels on the marble floor, and whispers a short prayer of thanks. Outside, his captains rename every gate and street. Constantinople becomes Istanbul before the ink on their orders dries. High on a balcony, the Sultan pockets a broken brick chipped from the wall. Proof, he tells himself, that no stone is eternal. He is 21 years old and has just ended a millennium in a single morning. Far away, in orchards and bazaars from Bursa to Baghdad, people stare at sped-up rumors. The city is down. The crescent flag flies over Europe. Maps are already changing. That night, Mehmed walks the silent avenues of his new capital, listening to his own footsteps echo off empty marble. He imagines markets buzzing, scholars debating under lanterns, ships swapping silk for silver in the harbor he now controls. Somewhere a cat darts across broken tiles, the first citizen of this new age. And in the quiet, he remembers Osman's old dream of a tree whose roots grip 3 continents. Mehmed looks up at the crescent moon and realizes he has just watered that tree with stone dust and cannon smoke. The spark that Osman struck in the grass has become a fire bright enough to light 2 worlds. He smiles, small and certain, then turns back to the business of empire. Tomorrow, bricklayers will start patching the breach. But tonight, a 21-year-old owns an ancient throne, and the rest of Europe suddenly feels very, very close. Picture a quiet Balkan village on a spring morning, mid-1400s. Sparrows chatter on red-tiled roofs, mothers knead dough for the day's bread. Then hooves drum up the lane. Ottoman tax riders, faces stern, dismount and read the Sultan's order, devshirme. In plain words, the levy of boys. Every Christian family must surrender 1 healthy son. No ransom, no appeal. 8-year-old Marco feels his mother's hands tremble as they push a crust of bread into his pocket. A kiss, a tear, and he is led away in a line of thin shoulders and shaved heads toward a future no one in the village can picture. Weeks later, the boys reach Edirne, the old Ottoman capital. Gates grown open to reveal neat barracks, drill yards, and a smell of boiled leather. Here, they will be remade. First lesson, new names. Marco becomes Mehmet. Second, new faith. Imams teach him to recite verses before he can pronounce them. Third, obedience deeper than blood. A Janissary trainer taps his own chest and says, "Your family dies the moment you join. Your brothers are the men who sleep to your left and right. Your father is the Sultan." Years pass in a blur of sunrise marches, archery drills, and silent meals. At 15, Mehmet can split a fig with an arrow at 50 paces. At 16, he can load, fire, and clean an early matchlock in under a minute. Each scar on his forearms tells a story of winter bivouacs in the Balkans or summer sieges along the Black Sea. Yet the deepest mark is invisible. The knowledge that he will never again hear his birth name without feeling like it belongs to someone else. The corps grows with him, swelling to 30,000. They wear bright red tunics and felt hats shaped like upside-down teacups, a silk plume fluttering behind like a comet's tail. Cities cheer when they march past. Enemies drop weapons at the mere rattle of their boots. Janissaries are the sharp point of every Ottoman spear, first to storm walls, last to leave a battlefield. At Mohacs, they cut down the Hungarian line in the time it takes to finish morning prayer. At Rhodes, they scale wet cliffs at midnight, swords clenched between teeth. Bards everywhere sing their name, yet the songs never mention what they gave up for that glory. One winter evening after drills, Mehmet crouches by a brazier with his bunkmate, Ali. Snow drifts into the courtyard, hissing on the coals. Ali admits he sometimes dreams in Greek, the language of his childhood, and wakes ashamed. Mehmet does too, but never said it aloud. They laugh, soft, guilty laughter, then fall silent when the sergeant strides by. Even whispers are rationed here. A year later, the Sultan calls for a parade in Istanbul. Streets thrum with drums, cymbals, and the clap of thousands of hands. Janissaries march in perfect rows, steel flashing like river water under the sun. Yet Mehmet senses a ripple of unease behind the cheers. Shopkeepers crane their necks, but step back the instant a plume wavers toward them. Mothers pull toddlers tight. Respect, yes, but also fear. These soldiers answer only to the throne. No magistrate, no provincial governor dares cross them. Power admired is one thing. Power untouchable is another. Mehmet files the thought away like a pebble in his boot. Tiny, nagging, impossible to ignore once noticed. Years roll on. Sultans come and go behind the palace gates, some wise, some weak, some half-mad from too much incense and isolation. With each change, the golden chain between ruler and core stretches a little thinner. Promotions slow, pay chests arrive light. Whispers ripple through barracks. Why storm walls for a master who counts coins more than lives? Officers shush the talk, but whispers spread like ink in water. One humid night, a messenger gallops in with a sealed order. Campaign in the east, dawn departure. Mehmet, now a seasoned sergeant, gathers his men. A rookie asks, "Are we truly marching for glory, or just to snatch another border town?" Mehmet's mouth opens, but no words rise. He remembers his mother's tear, his old name, the pebble in the boot. For the first time, he feels weight where once there was only iron discipline. At dawn, the corps forms ranks, red plumes bobbing like poppies in a field. Drums thunder. Yet beneath the rhythm lurks something offbeat, a faint thrum of doubt no drum can drown. Mehmet grips his musket, eyes the palace dome glinting gold in sunrise. Somewhere inside, a young sultan signs orders with a jeweled pen, certain his janissaries will obey as they always have. Out here, a line of soldiers wonders if loyalty earned by force can last forever. The column starts forward, boots crunching gravel, banners snapping. Istanbul's walls slide past, then fields, then the blue line of distant hills. No one speaks of rebellion. No one dares. But in the cold silence between footsteps, an idea forms, as real as breath on frosty air. Imagine if the boys who were raised to obey learned how to say no. Topkapi Palace smells of orange blossom tonight. Tiny glass lamps line the marble halls, their flames shaking like nervous hearts. Beyond a set of gilded doors lies the harem, part garden, part cage, home to 400 women and 1,000 whispered plots. Into this maze steps a new girl, 15, red-haired, wrists still sore from slave chains. Her birth name is Alexandra, but the palace calls her Hürrem, the joyful one. No one imagines she will bend an empire. The year is 1520. A tall, hawk-eyed prince has just become Sultan Suleiman. He carries a poet's notebooks in one hand and Europe's fate in the other. Each evening he strolls the harem, pausing at lutes, poems, chessboards, searching for something that feels like more than duty. One night, he hears laughter, sharp as breaking glass. It is Hürrem teasing a guard in flawless Turkish learned in 3 months. Suleiman stops, smiles, and never really walks away. Days fold into weeks. The girl from the Black Sea learns court protocols faster than tutors can invent them. She tilts her head just enough to show respect, never enough to look weak. She can quote Persian love verses, debate Quranic law, and, when she wants, make the Sultan forget an entire war council. Palace gossip nicknames her the Rose with Hidden Thorns. Hürrem bears a son, then a second, then a daughter. Each birth tightens her grip on the future. One problem? Suleiman already has an heir. Prince Mustafa, born of another consort, Mahidevran. Mustafa is handsome, popular with the Janissaries, practically crowned in waiting. Hurrem studies him the way a surgeon studies a wound, coldly, clinically. She decides the empire is not big enough for both of their ambitions. First move, friendship. She flatters the Grand Vizier Ibrahim Pasha, a childhood friend of Suleiman. Over sweet sherbet, she praises his campaigns, quotes his victories. Ibrahim beams. In his diary, he calls her sister. Hurrem files that word under useful. Second move, distance. While Suleiman marches against Hungarians, letters race between the front and the palace. Hurrem writes of jasmine blooming, of their toddler dancing, of how Istanbul lights look like stars fallen to earth. She ends each page with a single crimson kiss mark, wax mixed with crushed rose petals. Soldiers swear the Sultan rereads those pages more than he studies battle maps. Third move, whispers. Small, precise rumors drip through the palace. Nobody can trace the source. Ibrahim grows proud. He signs edicts without the Sultan. Mustafa drinks too much praise. He courts foreign allies. Each rumor is a snowflake. Together they start an avalanche. 1536, Suleiman returns victorious. A celebration feast sprawls under silver lanterns. Music swells. Talk flows. Mid-song, the Sultan turns to Ibrahim, voice velvet soft. They say pride ruins the purest friendship. Is it true? Ibrahim's smile wilts. Guards close in. By dawn, his body hangs in a silk cord, the same color as Hurrem's favorite gown. The court jitters, but resets. Mahidevran, sensing the chill, asks permission to move with Prince Mustafa to the provincial city of Manisa. Suleiman agrees. Hurrem watches them depart through half-shuttered windows. Her children, Selim and Bayezid, now chase each other in the courtyard, territory expanding like pools of sunlight. Years edge by. Mustafa's reputation only grows, brave, generous, fluent in 3 languages. Soldiers pin his portrait in barracks, poets rhyme his name with justice. Hurrem feels time tightening like a corset. She writes more letters, arranges more donations to soup kitchens, commissioning mosques that carry her inscription, "For the people, from the humble servant Hurrem, humble in stone, unyielding in spirit." Autumn, 1553. War drums call Suleiman east to campaign against Persia. He summons Prince Mustafa to join as a field commander. Camps sprawl across Anatolian plains, tents snapping under red banners. Night before the first battle, the Sultan enters a candle-lit pavilion. Inside waits Mustafa, unarmed, puzzled. Janissary guards block the flap behind him. The air tastes of wax and metal. Accusations fall like hammer blows, conspiracy, letters to the Shah, secret oaths with rebel beys. History will argue whether the evidence was forged. In that moment, evidence matters less than belief. Mustafa pleads loyalty. Suleiman's eyes swim, half father's sorrow, half monarch's ice. The order is given. Mutes with bowstrings step forward. The prince who could have been an emperor dies without a scream. Bowstrings leave no sound. Word races back to Istanbul faster than couriers can ride. Janissaries beat shields in stunned anger. Merchants shut stalls in mourning. In the harem, Hurrem kneels in prayer long enough for knees to bruise. Whether in gratitude or penance, only she knows. Suleiman returns, beard suddenly gray. He spends evenings alone, writing poems about guilt and moons that refuse to set. His council presses him to name the next heir. 2 sons remain viable, mild-tempered Selim, who loves wine and verses, and fiery Bayezid, who loves battle and boasts the Janissaries, now watch him with hungry eyes. Hurrem stands at a palace balcony at dusk, silk veil flicking in the wind. Below, torchlight paints the courtyard in flickering gold. She presses a rose petal between her fingers until red juice stains her skin. One son will inherit an empire. The other may inherit a bowstring. The choice will shape everything yet to come, including her own memory in the halls of power. She drops the bruised petal. It drifts, spins, and lands on cold marble, half red, half shadow. Far away, a muezzin calls night prayer, and somewhere inside the palace, a boy prince begins to dream of a throne that might cost him his brother. The empire is 60 years past Hurrem now, yet her shadow still drapes every corridor of Topkapi. Sultans come younger, reign shorter, and lean harder on the one figure no faction dares challenge, the Valida Sultan, the Sultan's mother. In whispered Greek and Turkish alike, people call this new era the Sultanate of Women. For most, the title feels soft. For anyone behind palace walls, it sounds like steel. Tonight, incense coils through the harem like pale snakes. Two women sit on opposite ends of a gold-inlaid divan. Both wear pearls the size of olives. Both can make a vizier bow with a raised eyebrow. On the left is Kosum, widow of Sultan Ahmed I. She has ruled behind the curtain through 2 sons and 1 grandson. Soft-spoken, eyes kind, until she writes an execution order. On the right is Turhan, teenage bride to Kosum's latest grandson and mother to the empire's next heir. Her face still carries the roundness of youth, but her stare could freeze boiling water. Everyone in the room knows only one of these mothers will guide the throne. The other may not leave alive. Outside, Istanbul glitters with oil lamps. Traders sip coffee thick as tar, and janissaries stomp tavern floors in offbeat rhythms. None of them see the chess match unfolding 2 courtyards away. Kosum moves first. She controls stipends, palace guards, the purse strings of 2 continents. Late at night, she summons the chief black eunuch, slips him a list of ministers loyal to Turhan, and whispers, "Transfer them. Far." Come morning, the men receive promotions that send them to lonely border posts where caravans stop twice a year. Turhan's circle shrinks overnight. Turhan counters. She visits the barracks of the Baltica, the axe-bearing palace halberdiers, bringing sweet cakes, new caftans, and, quietly, a promise. Stand with me and your pay doubles. Young soldiers grin through sugar-coated teeth. Steel loyalty changes hands 1 coin at a time. Kosum's next piece, rumors. She releases a story that pirates near Crete captured a letter showing Turhan seeks Russian aid. No one believes it entirely, yet doubt sticks like burrs. Turhan replies with piety. She funds free bread kitchens from Damascus to Sarajevo, each loaf stamped with the calligraphy, "Gift of the mother of the future Sultan." Hungry mouths become grateful tongues, and gratitude is the most reliable newspaper in the 17th century. Winter, 1651. Snowflakes the size of almond petals drift over the palace roofs. Inside, the child Sultan, barely 7, practices handwriting beside a brazier. 2 caretakers hover, one placed by Kosum, one by Turhan. The boy sneezes. Both women reach for the same silk handkerchief. Their knuckles touch, and for a heartbeat, the empire hangs on that small collision. That night, Kosum makes her boldest move. She sends servants to unlock a back gate that leads from the quarters of her loyal janissaries straight into the harem garden. The plan is silent. Replace Turhan's guards, escort her to safer lodging, and announce to the divan that the young mother has volunteered for retirement. No blood, no scandal, just an edited future where Kosum keeps the keys. But the axe-bearers Turhan befriended are watching. One slips through moonlit corridors and wakes her with a single word: now. Turhan grabs her sleeping son, hurries to the inner chambers, and bolts the doors of the imperial nursery. 30 halberdiers take positions. Their axes gleam like frozen lightning under oil lamps. Minutes later, Kosem's janissaries arrive, silk slippers silent on marble. They test the door, find it barred, then hear the metallic rhythm of axe heads tapping in warning. A standoff thickens the air. Somewhere, a baby whimpers. The sound echoes off domes painted with verses about mercy. Dawn bleeds into the sky. The Grand Vizier, summoned as referee, urges compromise. Turhan answers through the door. The empire needs only one mother. Kosem hears the words from the hallway, closes her eyes, and understands that every ladder eventually rests against a ceiling, even for her. By noon, she agrees to retire to the old palace across the Golden Horn. She steps into a covered litter, veiled, shoulders straight, heart heavy. The litter bearers lift. Snow crunches beneath felt boots. From a window, Turhan watches the procession wind toward the water. She feels neither triumph nor relief, only the sudden silence that follows a slammed door. Months pass. Turhan, now sole Valide Sultan, governs with a balance of velvet and iron. Tax grants flow to frontier forts. Scholars debate under newly tiled domes, and shipyards clatter with fresh timber for war galleys. Yet every night she prays in the palace mosque, face to the carpet, asking forgiveness for a choice that history will brand as necessary, merciless, or both. Beyond the palace gates, ordinary people notice little but the price of bread and the rumors that the empire's mother wakes before dawn to oversee it. Sailors swear the city's dawn call to prayer now sounds steadier. Merchants shrug. Whoever steadies the scales earns their blessing. Across the strait, in quiet chambers lined with fading tapestries, Kosem counts prayer beads until her fingers ache. Some nights she dreams of earlier reigns, when her guidance felt like sunlight to young sultans. Other nights, she wakes certain she hears axe heads tapping on stone. Inside the new order's walls, Turhan stands over her sleeping son. She brushes a curl from his brow and whispers, "Grow wise, little lion, for power is a cloak woven from every life it touches." Outside, the Bosporus glitters under a half-moon, silent witness to the truth that in this empire, crowns may rest on young heads, but they are cut and fitted by mothers who rule. A single tulip opens in the palace garden. Dawn light hits its petals, turning red into liquid gold. Court painters rush to capture the hue before the breeze bruises it. The year is 1725, and in the Ottoman capital, tulips are no longer flowers. They are lottery tickets. Sultan Ahmed III claims he loves the bloom for its grace. His Grand Vizier, Ibrahim Pasha, loves the bloom for its price. One perfect bulb can cost more than a silk merchant's townhouse on the Golden Horn. Traders swap hand-drawn catalogs in coffee houses, bidding by candlelight the way gamblers throw dice. A porter sells his donkey, buys 2 bulbs, brags he will retire when they sprout. A baker mortgages his ovens for a crate of fire-crown bulbs, packed in lamb's wool. Everyone says, "Just one more sale, then I'm rich." Night after night, the palace throws tulip parties. Lanterns shaped like flowers float on ponds, flutes play, silk gowns rustle like petals in wind. Outside the walls, janissaries wait weeks for back pay, and bread costs double what it did last harvest. Still, the vizier orders more bulbs, shipping them in velvet from Aleppo and Amsterdam. The empire smells of perfume and boiling debt. Spring 1730 arrives early and too dry. In the first festival of the season, a prized black parrot tulip droops in full view of the guests. A hush ripples through the crowd. soft as falling ash. Two dealers slip away to sell their stock before the rumor spreads. By sunset, no one will pay yesterday's price. By midnight, buyers vanish like smoke. Coffee houses fall silent. Men who bragged of fortunes now hide from lenders. The porter tries to sell his bulbs back for half. The merchant laughs him out. The baker smashes his last unsold loaf against a wall, flour dust mixing with tulip petals on the floor. Anger finds a name. Patrona Halil, a former sailor turned bathhouse towel boy. He lost every coin chasing tulip dreams. Now he wants blood instead of refunds. He whispers in taverns, "The palace feasts on flowers while your children chew dry crusts." Each night, his circle grows. Janissaries owed pay, artisans owed respect, imams who call the craze sinful vanity. 6 October, 1730. Halil strides into the barracks, waving a scimitar wrapped in a red sash. "Allah dislikes waste," he shouts. "Down with the flower drinkers." 500 Janissaries roar back. By noon, the mob swells to 10,000. They pour through Istanbul's streets, ripping tulip beds from gardens, tossing crystal vases into the Bosporus. Silk lanterns burst like fat fireflies under their boots. At Topkapi, Vizier Ibrahim Pasha stands on a balcony, watching smoke curl above the city he once lit with party lanterns. He sends gold to buy calm. The mob sends it back on spear points. Guards drag him to the Sultan's chamber. Ahmed III, voice shaking, signs a decree. "Execute the vizier, spare the throne." Minutes later, Ibrahim swings from a rope beside the very garden he flooded with flowers. But fury, once fed, grows hungrier. Patrona Halil marches to the gate of felicity and demands the Sultan himself. Ahmed III huddles with his advisors and understands the math. Thousands outside, dozens inside. He removes his jeweled sword, hands it to the chief eunuch, and steps aside for his young nephew Mahmud I. The mob cheers a new sovereign and drags the old one to forced retirement in a hunting lodge ringed with trampled tulips. By dusk, fires gutter out, leaving black petals glued to cobblestones. Traders count ruins where fortunes once bloomed. The new sultan promises lower taxes, cheaper bread, no more flower madness. The crowd disperses, tired but satisfied, for now. Istanbul wakes the next morning to a charred sweetness in the air, half smoke, half tulip perfume. Garden walls still drip with lantern wax. Account books lie open in wind-blown streets, numbers already meaningless. In a single night, a flower went from treasure to tinder, and the empire learned that elegance without balance is just fuel waiting for a spark. Far away, border garrisons hear the news and wonder what other dreams might wilt just as fast. Somewhere, a young engineer sketches a steam engine. Somewhere, a janissary polishes a musket and remembers how easy it felt to topple a throne. The petals of rebellion have fallen, but their seeds drift wide on the Bosporus breeze. Gray dawn over the Golden Horn, 1843. Hammers ring like church bells in the imperial shipyard. Sparks shower from iron plates as welders sweat beside enormous half-finished hulls. On scaffolds stand two foreigners, engineers from Glasgow, pointing at blueprints that promise to drag the Ottoman Navy into the age of steam. The flagship will be named Ertugrul, paddle-wheeled, armor-plated, faster than any sail on the Black Sea. If it works, the empire jumps a whole century in a single launch. Sultan Abdulmecid believes in coal, copper pipes, and anything that makes Europe stop snickering at the sick man. His reformers write edicts called Tanzimat, modern schools, telegraphs, trimmed beards, trimmed budgets. But every new rule scrapes an old habit, and old habits bite back. Across the water, in the shadow of rusting galleons, sits the guild of caulkers and sailmakers, men whose fathers stitched canvas when cannons still lit with fuses. They stare at the iron monster growing on the slipway and see unemployment in every rivet. Their spokesman, Master Hamdi, spits black tobacco and mutters, "Boilers don't pray 5 times a day." His friends laugh, but the joke lands hard. Inside the palace, whispers coil. Traditionalist clerics call steam engines metal gin. A jealous Russian envoy slides coins across tavern tables, hinting that one explosion at launch would keep the Straits safe for czarist fleets. Even some admirals distrust what they cannot reef or trim. The flagship gathers more enemies than barnacles before she ever tastes salt water. Summer heat settles like wet wool. Coal piles bake in the sun, reeking of tar. The Scottish chief engineer, Mr. McLaren, checks pressure gauges, mutters that safety valves arrive late, bolts arrive soft. He files complaints. Paperwork sinks under palace stamps and counterstamps. Deadlines loom. Corners cut themselves. Launch day, 12th August. The city crowds rooftops. Brass bands tune. Coffee sellers weave between Janissary veterans, now too old for swords, but eager for spectacle. A white sheet drapes the ship's bow, hiding a golden crescent crest. Sultan Abdulmecid appears on a balcony, silk umbrella shading his thin face. Cannon salute cracks the morning. McLaren gives the nod. Workers knock away wooden blocks. The Ertugrul slides, groaning, toward the water. Cheers swell, then snap off. A muffled boom shudders the hull. Steam hisses from a seam like a tea kettle possessed. Rivets ping into the crowd. A paddle wheel shears free and cartwheels across the slipway, scattering spectators like pigeons. Panic. Shipwrights yank wedges back in, halting the slide half in, half out of the Bosporus. Black water laps at the stern. The bow smokes. McLaren sprints below decks, returns ash-faced. Someone wedged scrap iron in the feed pump, cracked the boiler casing. Sabotage. Elegant, invisible until the engine first breathed. One more minute, and the flagship would have blown apart in front of the Sultan himself. The palace launches an inquiry. It sinks in, finger-pointing. Master Hamdi disappears down a coast road the same night, pockets heavy. The Russian envoy requests a sudden transfer for health. The 2 Scottish engineers, fearing a rope more than failure, board a coal barge at midnight and vanish into the Black Sea fog. Ertugrul is dragged back onto dry land, boiler gutted, dreams delayed. Repair estimates triple. The treasury groans under tulip crash debts still unpaid. Reformers beg for foreign loans. Bankers in Paris smile like cats. Each borrowed franc costs a sliver of customs revenue, a sliver of future pride. Months later, the flagship finally launches, quietly, at dusk, no crowds. She steams up and down the Bosporus exactly twice, coughing black smoke that stings fishermen's eyes, then returns to dock for further adjustments. By the time adjustments finish, Britain has ironclads with turret guns, France tests screw propellers, and the Ottoman Navy's newest wonder already feels like yesterday's miracle. In coffeehouses, men tap spoons on saucers, arguing whether fate, foreigners, or their own fear stalled the leap. A poet writes, "We built a chimney to the sky and choked on the first breath." The line spreads faster than newspapers. Yet a handful of cadets in the Naval Academy keep McLaren's blueprints, oil-stained and singed, folded under mattresses. At night, they trace boiler diagrams by lamplight, swearing the next ship will rise clean and honest. One teaches himself English to read manuals. Another steals coal to run a scale model in the laundry furnace. Small sparks looking for dry wood. Up at Yildiz Palace, Abdulmecid circles a globe, fingertip sliding across oceans ruled by steamships, flying other flags. He sighs, older than his years, and tells an aide, "An empire can lose a battle and live, but lose momentum, and it drifts until currents own it." Outside, the half-moon glitters on silent ship masts, some wood, some iron, all creaking the same old song. Somewhere beyond the dark strait, locomotive whistles echo from European rails the Ottomans have yet to lay. The race into the future has started. The empire has slipped at the starting gun. Whether it can still catch the train remains a question hanging in coal-scented night air, unanswered but unavoidable. Night drapes Yildiz Palace in 1881, and rain taps the tiles while Sultan Abdulhamid II paces his study, prayer beads sliding through his fingers. Courtiers already whisper his new nickname, the Spider, because he spins threads of information everywhere. On his desk lies a thick red ledger packed with names, trades, and private habits. A barber in Salonika who grumbles about taxes, a seamstress in Damascus who tells French jokes, thousands of tiny threads all tugging at his throne. To keep them tight, he creates the Hafiye, a secret police disguised as porters, pastry sellers, even imams. Telegram clerks copy every foreign cable, postmasters steam open letters, coffeehouse waiters memorize the punchlines of careless jokes. A man can cough the word Constitution in Izmir and feel a hand on his shoulder in Istanbul by week's end. At first, the system works. Rebels vanish before their plans mature. Street preachers hush mid-sentence. European diplomats complain they can't sneeze without offering the palace a handkerchief. But webs cost silk. Taxes rise, budgets swell with informants who multiply like alley cats, and fear seeps into daily life. A grocer stops giving credit. What if his neighbor writes a report? A schoolteacher burns her diary. The ashes smell of cloves and panic. In 1905, the first big hole appears. Abdulhamid's carriage arrives late to Friday prayer. 12 seconds later, a cart stuffed with dynamite explodes, missing him but killing guards and shattering mosque marble. The Sultan, shaken, doubles the watchers and piles on new rules. Cafes must close by midnight. Printing presses need triple permits. Train passengers must list every book they carry. Bureaucrats groan, but fear is stronger than fatigue. The very next year, a junior archive clerk named Kemaluddin begins photographing the palace's master spy index with a smuggled German camera. Glass plates hidden in bread loaves reach Paris, Cairo, and finally Salonika, stronghold of the reformist Young Turks. Exiled newspapers print page after page of agent lists. Overnight, the people who once whispered now laugh out loud at the spider's broken net. Arrests follow, but most informants vanish first. Some flee to foreign consulates, some simply switch sides. Telegram lines clog with governors begging clarity and ministers blaming each other for chaos. Real orders collide with forged ones. Nobody knows which to obey. In Damascus, an official shoots a rival over fake instructions to seize his house. Dock workers in Izmir strike, certain the palace is too blind to react, and they're right. Counter orders arrive 4 days late. Inside Yildiz, the Sultan narrows his circle to 3 aides, then 2. Lamps burn past midnight, but each fresh report contradicts the last until trust dies completely. Outside, the city stops whispering. Fishermen joke openly about the Sultan's fear of bombs, and no one reports them. Telegraph clerks shrug off overtime. Why copy messages the newspapers already print? One windy evening, Abdulhamid stands on a balcony, the Bosporus below him dotted with foreign steam freighters whose horns sound like distant mockery. He remembers the stalled, iron-clad dreams of 20 years earlier and sees how his own caution has bred a different weakness. Behind him, the halls are silent. Ahead of him, the future roars like an oncoming train he can't quite see. In Salonika, a printing press rattles through the night, flooding the streets with pamphlets that read, "Liberty, Equality, Fatherland." Young officers in starched uniforms tuck copies into their coats. They know the palace will still try to catch every word, but the web is sagging, rain-soaked, and tomorrow's wind is already rising. July 1908. A dry wind sweeps the Macedonian hills, rattling pine needles like whispering coins. Deep inside an army barracks near Salonika, Captain Enver Bey, trim mustache, bright eyes, slides a pamphlet under every pillow. Its cover shows a broken chain and 3 words stamped in bold: Liberty, Equality, Fatherland. By dawn, half the garrison sits at breakfast reciting the slogan under their breath. The other half already knows the tune. 2 weeks later, the troops march out, rifles on shoulders, bandoliers jingling. They point their bayonets not at foreign enemies, but at the Sultan's own telegraph posts, cutting every line that still carries Abdul Hamid's orders. The Spider Sultan hears the news hours late, then none at all. Facing mutiny from units he once trusted, he does the only thing left, announces a constitution, and recalls a mothballed parliament. The streets of Istanbul explode in cheers, fireworks, and brass bands. Young officers toast with sweet tea, convinced they have saved the empire in a single summer night. Yet revolutions, like newborns, wake you screaming at odd hours. The parliament fills with loud factions: liberals craving Swiss-style democracy, clerics warning of sin, ethnic deputies demanding their own flags. Across Anatolia, tax collectors find doors bolted. Peasants mumble that liberty must also mean lower dues. In the eastern provinces, bandits wrap themselves in equality and ride off with whole herds. Order wobbles, then sways. January 1913. Balkan wars batter the borders. Enemy shells fall within sight of the old capital at Edirne. Inside the frozen palace courtyard, Enver, now wearing a general's stars, storms a cabinet meeting at pistol point. Snowflakes land on the gun barrel as he forces the Grand Vizier to resign, shouting, "Indecision is treason!" The press calls it the raid on the Sublime Porte. The empire gains a new ruling trio overnight. Enver Pasha for the army, Talaat for politics, Samal for the navy. One dream, 3 signatures, 0 breaks. They promise quick glory to heal the Balkan bruises. Rail lines pulse with troop trains. Factories clatter out shells. Boys who have never seen a sea memorize maps of the Dardanelles. Still, Europe's clouds darken faster than timetables. When Archduke Franz Ferdinand falls to an assassin's bullet in Sarajevo, the continent lights a fuse no one can see, but everyone smells: cordite and summer dust. Enver smells triumph. He believes a bold strike now, alongside Germany, will reclaim lost land and rewrite the empire's sagging story. In secret night meetings, he signs treaties, swaps security for promises of modern guns, and bets 6 centuries of history on the turn of a continent-wide roulette wheel. October 1914. Ottoman cruisers painted gray drift into the Black Sea, raise German flags for 1 hour, shell Russian ports, then race back, flying crescents. Newspapers crow about a dazzling surprise. Within days, Russia, Britain, and France declare war. Church bells in Moscow toll. Telegraph keys in London chatter. Somewhere on the Bosporus a fisherman groans, knowing nets will soon tangle with mines. Winter trenches carve the Caucasus like fresh scars. Enver arrives in a white fur coat, waves his map, and orders a bold encirclement through waist-high snow. Columns march off. Blizzards swallow them. By New Year's Day, 30,000 soldiers freeze before ever seeing the enemy. Letters home speak of boots stuck to ice, rifles snapping like dry twigs, prayers turning to frost on beards. To cover the disaster, ministers tighten newsprint quotas, jail critics, and spin tales of imminent victory elsewhere. But the rail stations fill with bandaged men, and widows crowd mosque yards asking why liberty now tastes like iron and sorrow. In the desert, Jamal Pasha gathers an army to seize the Suez Canal. Heat replaces snow, thirst replaces frostbite. British machine guns rake the sand. The canal stays stubbornly blue and enemy-held. Across Anatolia, grain prices double, then triple. Mothers trade heirloom bracelets for flour. Children sleep hungry under banners that still promise a brighter tomorrow. Inside a dim parliament corridor, Talat Pasha reads casualty lists until his eyes blur. He wonders aloud whether a nation can drown in ink before it bleeds to death. Outside, crows circle a half-built hospital, waiting for whatever comes next. Yet the trio refuses to fold. They speak of new offensives, secret weapons, final throws of the dice. Every sentence ends with one last push. The empire, once called timeless, now runs on borrowed minutes. As spring 1915 nears, foreign fleets mass at the mouth of the Dardanelles, gray hulls lining up like storm clouds made of steel. Beneath the cliffs, Ottoman gunners load shells and whisper hometowns instead of prayers. In a wooden bunker, Enver pins a fresh map to the wall, circles the strait in red, and murmurs, "Hold here, and history forgives everything." Outside, the wind shifts from the sea, carrying the scent of coal smoke and fate. Early dawn, April 25th, 1915. Mist floats over the Dardanelles as Allied warships thunder against steep cliffs. Ottoman gunners fire back until their barrels glow, but a young colonel named Mustafa Kemal stands higher on the ridge, eyes level, voice calm. "I am not ordering you to fight," he tells his worn-out regiment. "I am ordering you to die." Many do, yet the ridge holds. News of the stand turns him into a household name, a lone bright spark in a darkening war. Elsewhere the empire buckles. In Mesopotamia, heat kills more soldiers than bullets. In Palestine, thirsty cavalry watch British biplanes circle like buzzards. Villages from Aleppo to Anatolia bury sons, then oxen, then seeds they can no longer spare for planting. By 1918, stray dogs outnumber bakers on Istanbul's back streets, and influenza finishes the work, famine starts. October 30th, 1918. On the gray deck of a British cruiser anchored near the Aegean island of Lemnos, Ottoman ministers sign the Armistice of Mudros. Ink freezes mid-flow in the salt wind, but the meaning is clear. Allied troops may occupy any strategic point they see fit. Within weeks, French Marines march down Istiklal Avenue, British officers play cricket on the lawn outside Dolmabahce Palace, and Greek patrols raise blue and white flags along the Aegean coast. The once mighty capital feels like a museum opened after hours, grand, silent, owned by strangers. Mustafa Kemal, now a scarred general, steps off a ferry and watches foreign uniforms file past the old city walls. Smoke from their pipes smells of victory. To him, it smells like theft. He requests a post far away from Istanbul's velvet paralysis and is granted the obscure job of Inspector of the Ninth Army in Samsun on the Black Sea. Bureaucrats assume exile. He reads opportunity. 1919. Kemal's small steamer noses into Samsun's harbor. Seagulls shriek, fishermen nod, unaware history just walked down their gangplank. Kemal begins touring inland villages, gathering officers who still have rifles and villagers who still have hope. They speak in barns lit by oil rags. No sultan, no pashas, only the homeland. Telegrams stitch these pockets into one cloth. Soon, the cloth flutters like a new flag. Grand National Assembly, Ankara, 1920. In a dusty, half-finished schoolhouse, delegates hammer desks instead of gavels and declare any treaty signed under foreign guns invalid. While Greek divisions push toward the heart of Anatolia, the assembly elects Kemal commander-in-chief. Supplies are counted in bullets per man, yet morale spreads the way spring grass splits paving stones. Sakarya River, summer, 1921. Artillery smoke mixes with wild time. For 22 days, the front barely moves a mile. Kemal writes orders in pencil because ink runs under sweat. When the final Greek assault breaks and rolls backward, soldiers shout, "The line is our honor, the river is our witness." Europe watches the retreat and realizes the partition map may be bleeding at the edges. September 9th, 1922. A lone bugle echoes over Izmir at dawn. Ottoman-era street signs blister in flames as nationalist troops raise the red crescent on the harbor fort. Civilians cheer, cry, or simply blink as though waking from a 4-year nightmare. Smoke drifts out to sea, mingling with the last departing Allied ships. Back in Istanbul, Sultan Mehmed VI counts beads in a palace suddenly short on servants. Couriers bring one telegram after another from Ankara. Cease using imperial cipher. Treasury records will be audited. Sultanate under review by National Assembly. On November 1st, 1922, the Grand National Assembly votes. The Sultanate is abolished. 98 deputies shout, "Yes, none dare no." 2 weeks later, a cold rain falls as Mehmed VI leaves Topkapi through the Gate of Salutation. British sailors escort him onto the warship HMS Malaya. He carries a small suitcase and the weight of 6 centuries. On the pier, a palace guard, unsure of protocol, lowers an old ceremonial sword onto a velvet cushion. The steel slips, clatters against stone, and the ringing hangs in the damp air. A handful of dock workers glance up, one sound marking the precise moment. Empire becomes memory. 29th of October, 1923. Ankara, now a capital smelling of wet earth and coal stoves, crackles with celebration. The assembly proclaims the Republic of Turkey. Mustafa Kemal becomes its first president. Cannon salute booms across bare hills. Children wave flags stitched last night by candlelight. Women who once could not even step outside without a veil watch fireworks beside men in felt hats. Kemal signs the decree, then signs it again for luck, ink blotting under his thumb. He spends the evening walking the streets incognito, coat collar turned up, listening. A shopkeeper explains the new alphabet, Latin letters replacing Arabic script, by tracing them in spilled flour. A shepherd visiting from the plateau says he will name his new lamb Cumhuriyet, Republic, so he never forgets today. Far away in a London auction room, an Ottoman officer's saber sells for the price of a used motor car. The buyer hangs it above a fireplace, unaware that a brighter relic now exists, a simple fountain pen on a desk in Ankara, still wet with signatures. Midnight. Kemal stands alone on a balcony. Frost edges the rail. The night smells of rain-damp pine. In his pocket, he carries the same watch stopped by shrapnel at Gallipoli. He clicks it open, notes the frozen hands, and smiles. Some wounds mark endings. Others freeze a moment, so the future knows where it began. Below, the city's last bonfire crackles down to embers. Sparks twist upward, tiny red commas writing one brief note across the dark. The empire is dust, but stories still burn, bright enough to light a republic built from their ashes. Empires rise and fall, but stories remain. If this journey moved you, subscribe and walk the path with us again.